Welcome to Soundbreaker. In today's episode, we're talking to three co-founders of 24/7 Artists, Yudu Gray, Davina Thomas, and Kevin Cruz. Thanks all for joining us. For our listeners who might not be familiar with you, could you please start introducing yourself, but not too much, just a little bit, because definitely we're going to dive into it.
Perfect. I'm Davina, one of the co-CEOs of 24/7 Artists.
I'm Yudu, one of the co-CEOs of 24/7 Artists.
I'm KC or Kevin Cruz, one of the co-founders and head of content for 24/7 Artists.
Well, pleasure to have you all. Definitely pleasure. You know what? Let's start with Davina. Davina, before we dive into it, I'd like to just to get a little bit of a background. How this whole thing started back, if we go back early days, who influenced you that you decided to take that path into the music business? Your love and passion, was it family, influenced by your parents or by friends, relatives? Please.
Okay, so I'm taking way back into
Yes,
time.
wait,
No.
absolutely.
um, so actually, it was Yudu. Yudu and I have, well, one, that's my husband. We've been married for 11 years now. When we first reconnected, because we've known each other since eighth grade, but we weren't friends or anything like that. We reconnected years later. And he said, "Hey, I have this idea." He was managing a studio at the time. And he said, I'm thinking about opening my own studio. And I've always loved music, always had an ear for music, but never, I didn't know that you could build a career in music outside of being a singer or the entertainment part. So he introduced that to me, and I will forever be grateful for that. So
Amazing. Here we go. You do. Please.
So music was my escape. I was an athlete throughout high school, college, after college, and I had an injury while training for the Olympics. And I never really was passionate about sports in the way that I was about music. Sports was like a means to an end. It was, how you get a scholarship or how you pay for things. But when everything was still, music is what I did. And music specifically creating, producing. I played the keys, I played guitar. And so when I had that injury, I was blessed enough to have a mentor who I went to and said, look, what do I do next? I can either get back on the horse and train for another 4 years, but I don't enjoy it, or I got to figure out what I'm going to do as an adult. And the advice he gave me that stuck with me for the rest of my life, he said, if you won the lottery, what would you do? Like, what would you do with your time? And I was like, I don't know, but music would be involved in some way. And he said, well, go figure out how to make a living with music. And so that's how I ended up at that studio. And while there, I just saw like all of my friends who were independent musicians, were trying to solve the same problem, trying to solve the same Rubik's Cube of how do I make a living? How do I make it in music? And I felt like I had enough of an understanding of the industry, but more importantly, where culture and tech and everything were going, that we could become a piece of that solution. And so when Davina and I got together and I was like, hey, I have this idea to like help independent artists and their teams like figure out how to become successful. At that time, you had to get signed. So it was like how to basically get signed or how to make a living while they were working to get signed. And that was the beginning of our journey.
Amazing. Kevin, if you give us just a little bit back in time and what influenced you to take that path.
Yeah, so I got into the music industry starting off with music videos. So in the music video world, working with music artists. And I got to see firsthand how many challenges and obstacles music artists got to face, whether it was like learning how to build a team or being in the studio, just navigating the music industry. I got to see how complex it was. And in general, for a creative, whether you're in video production or graphic design or photography, it's already, a complex industry to create a sustainable career for. So working with Yudu and Davina and learning about 24/7 Artists and the vision, it really hit home for me because I'm very passionate about working with creatives in general and helping them build sustainable careers. So that was like like the bread and butter for me. Like, oh, like I'm on the right path helping creatives.
Amazing. Davina, you co-founded House Studios with Yudu, your husband, and now you co-lead 24/7 artists together. Can you share what motivated you to transition from running a studio to creating a global community for artists?
So we sold House Studios right before the pandemic hit. We actually signed our papers March 1st of 2020,
Wow.
which, yeah, yeah. And then the world shut down. So God, definitely, God, the universe, everything was on our side.
And the checks were deposited just before.
Amen. So we had a little bit of money and a little bit
Yes.
of and a little bit of money and a whole lot of time, which was the
Yes.
first time that we have had anything like that. Yudu was on the phone day and night helping his artist friends kind of figure out like, okay, what do I do next? And he was able to help coach his artist friends, and they made more money during the pandemic with their talents than they had their whole careers. And
Wow.
so at the same time, he kept asking me, like, okay, so what do I do next? What do we do? Like, we're still young. It's not time to retire or anything like that. And I was like, yo, do what you're doing every day. And then, he started teaching online during, the Clubhouse era when that was really big. Then we started doing webinars. And then we are like, oh, we really have something here. And then thank God for Casey. He was like, hey, guys, let's do this together. So the transition it wasn't something that we necessarily planned out. It kind of just happened again with money, time, and three amazing people. It's just the journey's so great. I'm really excited.
Your journey from Liberia to winning a Grammy is remarkable. And how did your early days influence how you do business and to make it in the music today?
That's a great question. So, obviously being Liberian, being an African, your parents have very high expectations of you when you come to this country already. We came as refugees. A war started in 1990 that displaced, a million plus Liberians. And so when we moved to America, the expectation was even higher because we were constantly reminded, what a blessing it was, how many people weren't as fortunate, how many people didn't get out. And so the work
Hmm.
ethic was there from that, but also seeing my parents. My parents had to start over a little younger than I am now, or around the same age I am now. So I can't even fathom like imagine moving to a brand new country with three kids, with your parents who are aging. Your degree means nothing. Your relationships mean nothing. You have no connections. You own nothing, and you have to start over. So watching like my mother go back to school, my father had to hustle and figure out how to like pay bills and take care of his family. I knew I couldn't be lazy. So hard work was always going to be there for me. And then the second thing is when you're a refugee in another country, you form a close knit with those people who are like you. There's a bigger, stronger sense of community because for the Liberians who ended up in America and specifically for us in the DC metro area, everyone became an extended family. If you were Liberian and I was Liberian, we instantly were family. And so
Hmm.
when we started our business, I didn't realize it at the time. It wasn't until someone else mentioned it. We adopted that culture day one at House and day one at 24/7, which is if you're a part of either of our businesses at any point, you feel
Hmm.
like you're a part of a family. You feel like you're connected to something bigger than yourself. And so I think those two things that I brought to the table were we're going to work harder than we've ever worked and be grateful for it. And there's always going to be a sense of community and family. I have a lot of shortcomings too, and Davina and Casey definitely feel that. But those are the two things I bring to the table.
Amazing. Kevin, as a creative director, your work spans major brands and digital content creation. How do you mix your creative ideas and content with each brand? Brand's vibe, I should say, like blending your vision with their unique styles and, personalities.
Right. So this is where creativity and business meets. That's the world where I love to live in, where those two come together because you get to be creative, but it also has structure. Like that's me all the way. So first it starts like with the framework of what's the goal, what's the vision, what needs to be done. And from that framework, then it's like, okay, now we can get creative because we know where we're heading. We have a target. And so I just let the ideas fly and I come up with ideas. I look online for inspiration, Pinterest, put together mood boards, creative boards. And then from there, just like, talk to people or think of what's like the best content we can create and then work with the team and create the content. And from there, we go through a content creation process, review it, see if we like it. Does it work? Does it not work? Because we might create multiple different assets and we'll choose the one that best fits it. Does it align with the brand? And then we'll go from there. And then we'll go through that revision process until we get the piece of content or the project that, everybody likes or that best works.
Well said. Davina, managing a successful studio and now a global community of over 25,000 creatives is impressive. What do you think are the main things that help you build and keep up such a supportive network?
So I think the biggest thing for us is, how long we've been doing it. From you to doing it for, longer than I have, and then all of us bringing that, you know, the community together. And also with any relationship community, you nurture those relationships. I am a true nurturer by nature. It is what I love to do. So it's something that comes natural to me. It's something that comes easy. But relationships are everything. And when you're building a community, it's that, it's that give and take. Like, what are we providing to the community? That's how we keep it all together. I will be honest, it is not easy because, over 25,000 in that community is made up of all our relationships of over all the years. So yeah, just nurturing them, making sure that, you can't provide everything for everyone, but for just providing undeniable value at all times. Yeah, is how I tend to do it.
Well, Yudu and Davina winning a Grammy for Kendrick Lamar's album must have been a momental moment, phenomenal moment, and monumental also. And how did that achievement shape your view to on success in the music industry?
It was on our vision boards. When we started our studio, we had $800, and we literally built it up month by month. We take whatever we made the previous month and buy another piece of equipment, take another piece, sell that, upgrade it. Weeks without paying people on time, months without paying ourselves at all. So, early days of our studio, there was a struggle, but there was always a vision of like, we're going to be one of the best studios in the world and we're going to win a Grammy. And the audacity of us to even say that was, looking back, crazy, but we were crazy enough to do it. So when we actually won, I remember, and even how it happened, it was a relationship through a relationship that allowed that session to happen because of the work we had done. We were selected specifically because they knew the history and they knew the power of what we were doing in DC. And so that meant the world to me. It was like the stamp. Okay, you can have an idea, you can have a dream, you can work towards it, and it can happen. And if we can do that from where we started, then what can't we do? And so then even with 24/7, when we started this company, it allowed us to think bigger day one. Because when we said we're going to win a Grammy one day, that's like saying we're going to win the lottery. It was impossible, and we did it. So now that I've done the impossible multiple times, and we as a team have done the impossible in our own right, what can't we do? How big can we dream? And so that was a blessing, and obviously Kendrick's generational talent. So to be tied to that classic piece of work forever, like that's etched in stone. That's like, it's an amazing feat, and it's fully representative of us as a team because everyone on that team had to execute for us to reach that level to where that we would be trusted with that quality of work. It wasn't one person; it was an entire village that allowed for that to happen. And the same thing's happening now with 24/7. The relationships and our brand and our rep are starting to match to where people are reaching out to us because they know if I work with 24/7, it means something. That there's a power to that.
Amazing. Great mindset and extremely inspiring for others and for our listeners who actually are going to be watching and listening to this episode. Kevin, as someone deeply involved in digital trends and brand, identities, how do you stay ahead of ever, changing digital landscape? And how does this, inform your work at 24/7 Artists?
Honestly, man, just consume content, consume a variety of different content. I kind of tell myself, like, when I'm watching movies or music videos or whatever content I'm consuming, I kind of like tell myself, like, oh, like I'm not relaxing, like I'm working, because at the same time, like I'm enjoying the content, I'm also dissecting. I'm like, okay, like what, like that's interesting. They use this transition, or like I like this creative direction they did, or I like this cut, I like this scenes, or that's an interesting, a framework that they did. So like, I'm always kind of like digesting the content, and I try to consume different variety of contents and also from different cultures as well, just to kind of stay, like informed, stay up to date. And of course, that translates into the work that we do at 24/7 Artists, because we are a global community. So we do want to be inclusive. And yeah, so just consuming content, being observative, and yeah, just having detailed work for sure.
Amazing. Vina, balancing your role as a female CEO or co-CEO and a mother, a wife, all of these, they must be extremely demanding. All of these responsibilities that you carry on a daily basis. How do you manage all of this? And what advice you have for women who's aspiring to lead and in the creative fields
I
and
wake
follow your
up,
footsteps?
I wake up, I don't make any mistakes. I'm perfect. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's the furthest thing from that. I think the biggest thing for us and what we've done. So our daughter is 20. She'll be 20 at the end of this month. And then we have an 8-year-old and a 9-year-old. And since the beginning, we've always involved our kids in the process. So our daughter has worked with us, and since she was 5 years old, she used to do the walkthroughs for the clients. And up until currently, she works with us, and also our boys. They do all the merch inventory, so they can get paid in V books and stuff like that. And then as a wife, Yudu and I are together 24/7, no pun intended, but we are together all the time. And I think the way we keep our relationship fresh and also exciting is we never stop learning about each other. We are a true partnership, and we've had to, over the years, learn how to master this relationship thing with us, with our children, with our friends and family. And so, what we've implemented, my advice to, if you are a husband or a wife and you work with your spouse, even if you don't work with your spouse, we wear hats, right? So, for us, is very important because the lines get blurred very easily. And we love what we do. So at one point, all we did was talk about work, to where I had to take a step back and I had to say, look, I don't know when I can come to you if there's a problem with the kids or the relationship or whatever. So we came up with a system where it's called hats. So right now, I need you to wear your husband hat. Right now, I need you to wear your father hat. And vice versa for me. He'll say, I need you to put on your CEO hat. I need you to put on your employee hat. And that's how we separate it for our relationship. As far as the kids, if I was to give one piece of advice, is I had to learn not to tell my kids I have to work because I'm doing it for you, right? They don't want to hear that, and they will never understand that. They will never understand the sacrifices that you put in as a parent for them, and it's not for them to understand. But what I do now is I say, look, we're going to be working and going out of town. We travel a lot, and we'll be gone for a week. But let's put on the calendar, right? Because it teaches them time management as well as helps us. When my time with the kids, when I'm with them, it's just for them. And we schedule that time out. And it's with all three of them. And we do cuddle time, we do movie night, and we stick to those schedules. And if at any time I have to miss those appointments, I go to them like I would do anybody else and say, hey, we're not going to do movie night this Friday, but let's figure out something we can do together before I leave or when you come back. And because kids don't understand sacrifice, most adults don't understand sacrifice, right? So
No.
why do we expect them to understand the sacrifice so that in 10 years they can live in a great house? It's just not going to happen. So be honest with your kids, one, but also make sure you put in the time, set time aside that's just for them. And we do it as a family, but we also have individual time with our kids, our one-on-one time. So I know that was a lot,
No.
and over time, it gets better and better with practice, like anything else. Treat your kids and like any other relationship, you have to nurture that. So,
It's very informative and great advice, actually, for other females or males who wants to take the same path that you guys took. It's not an easy path, but you guys took it. You succeeded. You set the parameters, and you've done it the right way. Sure, nothing is easy. There's always bumps in the road, but as long as you are able to overcome these bumps and keep going forward, and that's the key.
and
That's the main key.
can I say one more thing?
Oh, please,
Also?
absolutely, yes.
Please.
No, please.
For women in this space, because all too often we lose ourselves. We lose ourselves in a marriage. We lose ourselves in parenthood. We lose ourselves in the job. Schedule your time. And even if it's just 5-10 minutes a day, schedule your time to just, hey, honey, I need you to take the kids. Mom and dad or kids, I need y'all to give mommy 5 minutes. Schedule your nail appointments. And it may seem like I don't have that time. Like that's a luxury. It absolutely is, but you deserve that. You have expectations for yourself and know that you deserve that little bit of time. And if you learn how to put that time in, and I tell women who are moms, wives, or just entrepreneurs, even if you're working a 9 to 5, just women all the way around, schedule your
Yes.
personal time first and then schedule the work around it. If you work a 9 to 5, you have that schedule set. When I say schedule it first, schedule it after everything else. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, nobody else is good. You have to put yourself even before those kids sometimes because you have to be good. Because they deserve 100% of you, just like your spouse does and just like you do. You deserve
Absolutely.
100% of yourself. So
Absolutely. I guess I could see on the horizon a masterclass here by Davina for consulting for relationships and marriage and business at the same time. How to balance all three of them and being a mom. So 4 things really.
4 things. Hey,
Yes.
I'll take it. I'm very passionate about the topic.
Yes.
So yeah.
Amazing. I mean, very inspiring. Yudu, looking back at your entrepreneurial journey from starting with the $800 that you mentioned earlier to achieving significant success with House Studio, what were the biggest, I would say, challenges you faced and how did you overcome them?
I don't know if you have enough time for that because that's like a multi-part novel, but I'll
Uh-huh.
I'll kind of hit the high points. So
I do see a
one,
reality show here,
oh
by the
God,
way.
we thought
Yes.
about that. We were approached for that, and thank God we didn't do it because I think it could have ended up bad. Um, but I'd say the main things for me is we learned as we grew, and the blessing with that is we didn't know what we didn't know. So a lot of our things were unconventional, and a lot of the things we did went against the grain, and that made us different, and that was exciting. The downside of it is, there are some core elements of running and building a business that don't change, and we didn't know what we didn't know, so we didn't set ourselves up to scale and grow. I think the way we could have. We didn't communicate effectively with our internal team the way we should have. And that's again on leadership. That's on me. And we never really took the time to like step back and say, okay, what does the next 5 years look like? We kind of started. It was like putting a match to gasoline. It took off. It blew up. It was this big thing, and then it felt like we were trying to like hold the horse while it was running 1,000 miles an hour and like trying to make it look like we knew what we were doing when we didn't. The beauty of that is we were able to bring on partners and mentors, which I think is super important. And they were able to teach us both through communication and through action what to and not to do. Both are really important. And so by the time we exited House, I think it was a laundry list of, man, if I knew this, I would have. And the advantage and beauty of our second business, and this is why I think, when you look at the history of entrepreneurs and successful business owners, usually it's their second or third business that takes off. The first one really is like college. I feel like we came into this business better prepared to communicate, to plan, to execute. And then I'll also say, like, one of our secret weapons is Kevin, although he's younger than us, and he didn't have like the history of house, the way Kevin's mind naturally works is very operationally driven. So Kevin's very big on SOPs. He's very big on check-ins with the team. He's very big on all the elements that I feel like we missed our first go round. So even though we knew we needed it this go round, one of our secret weapons is our partner does it naturally, organically. It's the first thing he thinks about. Is the team clear? Do they understand? Do they have the processes? Do they have a checklist? Are we following up? Are we asking them if they're supported? Right. So I think like not knowing those things early on, because I also didn't have like a huge work experience to know like, man, like I wish my boss did this better. It just gives us an advantage this time around. But yeah, the biggest ones were we didn't know what we didn't know. And by the time we brought on the mentors, which was a big one, and partners who understood what they were doing, I feel like the foundation wasn't set properly. So the success of House was crazy because everyone looks at it as like, man, you guys won a Grammy and did this and did that. And in my mind, I'm like, if I knew then what I know now, House would have been a Sony, like, we would have been as big as we could have been. But it wasn't meant for that company. I know what 24/7 is going to benefit because now we have that experience and we have Casey. Mm-hmm. So we're like doubly armed good. And then obviously you're hearing Davina, that's the other secret weapon is Davina's ability to nurture relationships, check in with people, make sure people are good, make sure the team internally are good and like we're wearing the right hats. And like when we need to take a break, we can step back. She's very in tune with us. So where I'm driving for us to go, I've got two partners that help my, hold me accountable so that I can like be a better leader and be better at what I'm doing. So it's a blessed situation. And that's a great question because anyone who's starting a business, you don't know what you don't know. And the best way to figure that out is to find some really good mentors. And if you can't find a physical mentor, just about every brilliant person writes a book because once you have too much knowledge, you have to put it out. You can go read books of great leaders and great business owners, and they're going to tell you what they wish they knew. And you can learn from reading the book.
Partnerships not always work, but in this case, a lot of them work also. But in this case, obviously, in the positive side, we'll say, the match is absolutely amazing between all the three because each one of you knows their role and they stick to their role. It's like, okay, this is my responsibility. This is what I want to do. And that's what makes 24/7 artists really, how should I say, a perfect home. And not just for artists, also for you guys, the way you handle it and run it. Obviously, it shows in the results of it.
Man, thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin, as a creative director, what advice would you give young creatives starting out in branding and digital content creation? And how can they stand out, in such a competitive industry right now?
Great question. I'll speak on my experience. And if I were to give other creatives advice, I would say consistently get better. Focus on consistently getting better. Don't just go through the motions. From my experience, I always work to get better. When I completed one project and I moved on to the next, I would say, okay, how can I do it better than last time? How can it get better? And it can be something as simple as like, oh, let me improve my motion graphics. Let me collaborate with another creative to make the whole experience better. So consistently work to get better. And it might even be something outside of the creative part. It might be like, okay, how can I onboard clients better and make it a better experience for them? It goes beyond the realm of just creativity. You have to think about other factors that are part of the entire experience, whether it's communication with people, communication with other creatives. So I would say always ask yourself, how can I get better at what I'm already doing? Because people will notice, people will pick up, they'll see your work, and a year later, if it's better than what you were doing last year, people say, wow, like this guy is working, this creative is working, he's going somewhere. And so I would say work to get better. Definitely get mentorship. Yudu and V know about this. Like I would like call them and text them with questions all the time. I would text Yudu like at 2 in the morning. I'm like, so how does this work? Or I was just like, hit them up from random things. But, I've been so blessed to have them as mentors and guiding me. So I would say get mentors, talk to people who know more than you, who have done more than you, who are where you want to be. And network with other creatives. Don't try to be this cool ass creative that like is just like isolating themselves, or you're just super clicked up with just your homies. Like, no, get outside of your box. Go network to with other creatives. Go to different types of events. Talk to them. Like really collab with them. Get to know them and get on different types of projects, because that's how you'll become a better and more well-rounded creative. So yeah, I would say those three things. If you can do those three things consistently, there's no way you're not going to take off and have success in your career.
Amazing. You know what makes this interesting, that each one of you have different stories and different perspective on the music business and creativity, and different attitude towards entrepreneurship and leadership, and combining all three of you together with the ideas and the vision, obviously, and combine it all under one umbrella, 24/7 artist, is extremely inspiring. Really, really inspiring. Anything each one of you or all of you together or one of you want to mention, that some new project or anything that you guys working on under the umbrella of 24/7, that so far viewers and listeners and whoever is going to be inspired by your story and by 24/7 should look for this year?
Who wants to take that one?
You.
You got it, you.
Okay, of course. I get
Okay,
thrown down.
you do.
Yeah, we have a lot coming up.
Please
So-
share it with us. I know our viewers and listeners at
Absolutely.
Soundbreaker.
So by the time this comes out, I think we'll be one day someone will listen to this and I'll be like, damn, that's where they were. But so right now we're on what we call version 1 of our platform. Our platform, the goal is to make it the operating system for the music business. The vision we have is that an artist, a manager, producer, engineer will open their browser, and 24/7 is where they start their day. It's where they'll communicate with their team, where they'll manage their files, manage their money, where they'll learn, where they'll connect with other people in their community, in their artist community. Version 2 of our platform launches January of 2025. So between now and then, we're rolling out a series of free courses for every member, premium courses for our paid members. We have opportunities and resources from some of the best companies in the world in the music, business, finance, and tech space available. We have our writing camp, our traveling writing camp, 24/7 sessions where we're going from city to city.
Mhm.
Artists can apply. If selected, you attend for free. You create songs and collaborate with others. You learn the business from 24/7 team and mentors and our partners. So, again, I'm really excited because over the next 6 months, we'll see 24/7 kind of popping up and it's just like energy. And then when it kind of explodes quarter 1 of next year, for those who know, they'll understand where it came from, that it's by design and that we're working tirelessly behind the scenes, preparing for this big thing. But for those who don't know, it's going to kind of feel like, what is this and where did it come from? Because ultimately what's going to happen is you're going to see a slew of artists who are building and growing successfully, who are going to be repping and claiming 24/7 artists. Because to me, it's not just a company, it's a movement. Like an artist is going to claim it. They're going to say, I'm a 24/7 artist, and that's going to mean something, right? You remember, Bob, when it was not a positive thing to be called an indie artist. That was not a positive title or tag. When I
Absolutely.
started out, that was the worst thing you could call someone was an independent or indie. That meant you were broke. It meant you weren't supported. It meant you were on your own. We're going to take that title and flip it on its head. But people aren't going to say I'm an indie artist or an independent artist. People will say I'm a 24/7 artist. And that means I do this full time, really well. I run my business. I live off my music. I do good business. And that's going to be the future of the industry. I'm claiming it now.
Correct.
So we did
Correct.
House. A lot of the things we said we would do, we did. And we never said it up front. So to other people, it was like, oh, you guys are lucky. Luck is preparation, right? Like you got to be prepared and you got to work.
Absolutely.
So I'm claiming it now on your podcast so that one day when we do all the things that we say we're going to do, you're going to be able to say, you know what? I met the co-founders and back in 2024, they said they would do it and they did it. So This is the first
Well,
time I'm
definitely.
publicly declaring this. This is like a big deal.
You guys definitely on the right track, first of all. And I do interview a lot of people and I speak to a lot of, but now all focusing towards artist empowerment and uniting everything together. It is changing. The business definitely, and you guys on the right path. 24/7 artists, definitely for our listeners and viewers on Soundbreaker, the 24/7 artists on the right path and on the right track, definitely. And I have to say, it's extremely inspiring and motivating. Davina, Yudu, Kevin, it's been an absolute pleasure having all three of you here on Soundbreaker today. And all great things must come to an end. A lot we talked about, and definitely we're all in for empowering artists and the future of the music business. And you guys are the future, 24/7 artists. Thank you very much for joining me today. And this concludes today's episode of Soundbreaker. Please make sure to follow us on socials and stay tuned for our next episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share the Soundbreaker podcast. And if you are joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.